Critical race theory is a way of thinking and teaching about America's past and present by looking at the role of systemic racism, what we've just been discussing. But the very term itself, critical race theory, has become a political flashpoint across the country, especially when it comes to how to teach young people about justice and equity in America. As Amna Nawaz reports for our Race Matters series, the debate over its potential role in school curricula has set off a firestorm that has roiled school districts and state legislatures nationwide.
It's already over. It's got to be over.
Next year, Jamison Maddox will be a senior here in Loudoun County, Virginia. His favorite subject is history, even though he felt Black history was lacking.
I think there could be some things that happened in history that should have been taught.
In school, did you learn about the Tulsa Massacre?
No.
Did you learn about Juneteenth?
No.
Do you feel like those are things that should be taught as part of your formal education?
Definitely, definitely.
Jamison's mother, Vanessa, agrees.
This is American history. All of it should be taught in a certain context and also age appropriate.
Maddox, who works as a job recruiter, and her husband raised both their sons in this affluent Northern Virginia suburb over the last 2 decades. Last year, as the national racial reckoning resonated here, Vanessa joined a Facebook group pushing what they see as anti-racism efforts in school.
When I saw the anti-racist parent group, I'm like, okay, I got to be in that.
What spurred you to join that group in the first place? What has that been like?
There is a definite need for a group like this. I like to be surrounded by like-minded, fair-minded, equitable people. You don't have to think like me, you don't have to be like me, but you do have to be anti-racist.
Not everyone in Loudoun County sees it that way.
There were parents that were just sick of it. They were just sick of, constantly being told, if you don't agree with me, then, you're a racist.
Ian Pryor's 2 daughters are in elementary school here. He's a former Trump administration Justice Department spokesman, now leading a group called Fight for Schools, a political action committee pushing back on equity and inclusion measures.
We're not about not teaching history. We're about teaching history in an objective way that is not represented as America is systemically racist.
When you're looking not at individual acts of racism, but the systemic racism that exists within America's educational institutions, what would you suggest be done right now?
So there's a balancing act here of making sure that there's equal opportunity for all, that we're committed to meritocracy, but also that when we are trying to figure out how to deal with any kind of social problems, we do not overstep and overreact.
There's 2 signs right there.
Parents who agree with Pryor are now part of a growing chorus opposing what's known as critical race theory, or CRT, often a graduate-level framework that examines how the legacy of slavery and segregation in America is embedded in legal systems and policies. The thing is...
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Matty's Rap, the show where we rap about things that guys rap about when we're hanging out. I'm your host, author Matt D. Talford, author of 2 award-winning books, From Fear to Faith, A Survivor Story, which can teach you how mindset can help you to overcome the absolute worst of circumstances, regardless of what the subject is. Could be your health, could be a relationship, could be work, whatever. You'll learn some tools from that story that will teach you how to overcome any situation, regardless of how bad it is, simply by having the right mindset, all right? Now, and the second book, Stuck in an Elevator, which is another book you can learn from. It is a tale of passion and self-discovery that takes place high above the Los Angeles skyline. And you know what? Stuck in an Elevator might be a great segue into what we're talking about here today. Critical race theory, okay? Critical race theory. But before I jump into that, I want to say a special thank you to those of you who are my returning subscribers. I thank you guys so much for subscribing, for watching my content, for liking it, for commenting, and for sharing it. My subscriber base grows every week, and that would not happen if you guys weren't watching and weren't sharing the content. So thank you so much. And now for those of you who are new to the channel, I hope you like this video. I invite you to scroll through my list of videos, look at some of my other content, and hopefully you'll consider becoming a subscriber. If you do subscribe, be sure to turn on the notification bell and set it to all so that you'll be not updated, so that you'll be notified when I upload new content. Now, let me get into this. I said a segue from stuck in an elevator to what we're talking about today, which is dismantling critical race theory. And I know some of you watching this might be like, oh, what are you talking about? What's he mean dismantling critical race theory or whatever? Why does it need to be dismantled? Here's a brother talking about dismantling something that is supposed to be helping him and other people. Pay attention to what I'm going to be talking about in this video today, because I feel like critical race theory as presented is not really solving the problem. And this is why some 40 plus years after it was first introduced in the United States of America, we're still talking about critical race theory. It hasn't solved anything, all right? And what do we say madness is? Madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So by the time we get to the end of this video, I will share with you what I think is necessary to achieve the outcome that critical race theory seems to want to achieve. I mean, now the fact that I'm shrugging my shoulders and saying seems to want to achieve says that, first of all, critical race theory in and of itself does not have a clear-cut definition, if you ask me. And I think that anybody who's never heard of the term before will experience the same thing that I experienced when I went to look it up. Why did I want to go look it up? I saw a bunch of people talking about it in social media that are friends of mine, and I said, you know what? Somebody may ask me for my opinion on what critical race theory is, or what, not what my opinion on what it is, but what my opinion is about it. And I didn't have an opinion because I really, honestly, I had sort of loosely heard of it before, but I never really dug deep into it, so I didn't know what it was. But now it seems to be buzzing again with this new administration, and there's, 6 months, since the inauguration. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. So anyway, I wanted to find out a little bit more about it so that I can have an opinion about it. All right. Now, I will tell you that in looking up, in looking up critical race, I'm not cutting that out, by the way, I'm real. In looking up critical race theory, I was not able to find a clear-cut 1 or 2 sentence definition of what it was. All right. The term critical kind of already triggered me because I'm a writer, so you're thinking, okay, critical writing 101 or critical literature or whatever. Okay, so somebody's obviously critiquing something. So anyway, you guys saw the video clip I put at the beginning of this video. I thought that was a pretty decent explanation of it. I was able to find a more simplified explanation of it, and I'm going to get into that right now. Critical race theory is pretty much an academic concept about how racism is interwoven into the fabric of American society. Okay? So really, what that says to me is that critical race theory is a thing about a thing. I mean, that in and of itself already is setting you up for confusion and division. So, but we're talking about dismantling critical race theory, and that's what I hope to do by the end of this video. Now, what is that thing? You said, Matt, it's a thing about a thing. What is that thing? The thing is an academic concept about a thing, institutionalized American racism. First of all, why are we talking about institutionalized American racism? I mean, if that ain't obvious to the people who are on the receiving end of that, I mean, where do you live? Like that's pretty obvious, okay? And institutionalized racism also doesn't just happen here in America. It happens. All you got to do is go look at some diaspora news from, Africa. You can go look around. You can even see stuff in China where people from Africa are being discriminated against. So this is not a thing that is just American. I mean, it's all around the world. But listen, let me tell you something. I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging into critical race theory because I don't want anybody to think, oh, he's picking one side or the other. I'm not about that. I'm here actually to dismantle it. All right? I'm trying to dismantle this thing. So, what's the argument, Matt? Okay, you said you wanted to find out about critical race theory because you saw a bunch of people talking about it on social media. What were they talking about? They were arguing, okay? What was the argument, Matt? The argument was around whether or not to teach it in schools, all right? What's your response, Matt? My response is that I couldn't give, my nephew might be watching, I couldn't give 2 toilet bowls full of digested peanut butter brownies about whether or not it's taught in schools, all right? I couldn't give 2. You can fill in the blank if you want to be a little bit more adult. My nephew ain't grown yet, so I try to keep it clean for him because I know he's watching. All right. So Why do I not care, Matt? I don't care because teaching it does not solve the problem. It does not solve the problem. Why do I say that? Let's break that down. All right? And I'm drinking my coffee today out of a paper cup today, all right? For two reasons. If I'm gonna be completely honest, I left my mug at home, all right? But it's appropriate, okay? Because the second reason I'm drinking out of a paper cup is because it actually is fitting for this topic. You throw it away. You can take CRT and throw it away. Just like I'm gonna do this paper cup when I'm done with this coffee. All right, so now, why do you say, Matt, that you could give two rhymes with spits about whether or not critical race theory is taught in school? I don't care one way or the other. Why? Because again, if you have to learn how to treat somebody in school as curriculum, then somebody's parents aren't doing their job, all right? And if so in other words, if school is teaching you about the history of racism in this country, okay, so you are, and I'm trying to be as in the middle of, I'm trying to be as in the middle of this subject as possible in order to get through to the end, which is dismantling it. Okay, so if you got to teach it in school, why are you teaching it to me? Me, so-called black man. I'm gonna get to that in a minute too. So-called black man. I'm gonna get to that in a minute too. Okay, why are you teaching me when my people, since their inception in this land and their introduction to so-called white people, their experience by and large has had them on the receiving end of racism? Why are you teaching it why are you teaching it to me? I already know it. I already know it. So why are you teaching it to me? Now, if you're so-called white, yes, there are some things that, and okay, I get it. There's a lot of white people. I know people my age that did not know about the Tulsa race riots of 1921. They didn't know about it, okay? So I get that. I understand the argument that all of history needs to be taught. But with regards to what the intended outcome may be based upon what I read, and guys, listen, you can look up critical race theory on your own. I'm not going to spend an hour going into it because it's pretty involved. I'm not going to spend an hour getting into all of it, all right? That said, some of the major tenets of it for some people is that, hey, you know what? It should be taught. The certain historical events that are not so pretty need to be taught in school, okay? To what end is my question, all right? But I get it. There's some people that didn't know about that. That's going to give some people a little bit more sensitivity. But guess what? My friends that I just told you about that didn't know about the 1921 Tulsa race riots, these aren't people who I would classify as racist anyway. They will give any man they encounter who desires their last bottle of water out of their trunk, or would give them the raincoat off their own back because they know they had a roof to go to and this person doesn't, all right? I'm talking about so-called white folk, all right? So you're telling them about the 1921 race riots, it's coming as a shock to them, but not so much, and it's not changing their behavior because they're already behaving in an appropriate manner to all mankind, okay? What this thing really boils down to at the end is righteousness versus unrighteousness. You can wipe all this other stuff out. You can throw it in the trash. I got a video. I'll put a link below titled, "What Can Simple Bags of Flour Teach Us About Race?" All right? I want you to check that content out. It's about a 15, 16-minute video. I'll put a link below. It's on my channel. You can check that out, okay? So this is why I say so-called white and so-called black, all right? But anyway, I'm talking about a guy who you're not teaching anything to. Now, if this other kid that's sitting in that same classroom was brought up by the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, whatever chapter, for whatever town he lives in, if his daddy is that dude and he's teaching him, hey, hate all of these people that don't look like you, then nothing you're teaching him in that classroom is going to change his mind. You know, perhaps. Some say, well, if he sees how bad it was, then it might. But you know what? It might not. So, and again, it does not resolve the problem, which is stated to be institutionalized racism interwoven into the fabric of American life, American society, American what? Politics, American educational system, American banking, American real estate practices, American, what else we got here? We talked about religion, church, okay, if you go to church. So this thing is interwoven into the fabric of everything that makes this country, but there's a reason for it, okay? I'll get to that later. And you're on a high level, let's talk about it. On a high level, let's talk about it. When you bring a group of people over to function in servitude, and you have within the constitution of your nation and within the books of the law that any persons who are not considered white are not considered to be citizens, then you built pretty much an infrastructure that I'm not even gonna get into it. It's right there. It's right there in front of your face. So why are you teaching me that this is interwoven into the fabric of American society? I already know it, okay? For somebody who doesn't know it, teaching it to them isn't gonna change their reality. They're gonna get their grade, A, B, C, D, or F, okay? And then they're gonna move on with their life, and they probably will remember very little about that class. So you're hoping to get a small percentage of people. Anyway, I'll spend too much time on that already, because now you guys are probably thinking I'm on the camp of it doesn't need to be taught. On the flip side, if you teach it, I don't care. I don't have to sit in there because it's not affecting me. And if it were affecting me and that was part of the curriculum and I had to get a passing grade in that class to move on, then guess what? I'm gonna get a passing grade in that class. But it doesn't change my opinion, or it doesn't change my reality of who I am. Probably not gonna change your reality of who you are. Either you're a person who is loving and kind already, or you're not, all right? Now, so therefore, whether or not to teach CRT or critical race theory is pointless, because to me, it doesn't, whether you teach it or you ignore it, ultimately does not resolve the very problem that the subject matter aims to address, all right? So racism. Racism, as understood for the past several centuries, is simply a byproduct of the real issue, which is, in my opinion, the real issue is so-called white supremacy. Okay? Why do I say so-called white supremacy, Matt? I just told you to go check out my book. My video, What Can Simple Bags of Flour Teach Us About Race? Whiteness and blackness as applied to people, it simply does not exist. All right? All right? When you're describing people, you're describing typically, let's take the Bible, for example. All right? Let's take the Bible. Most people can jive with that. It's one of the most pervasive books around the world. So let's translate it into how many different languages. Let's talk about the Bible. The Bible deals, and ancient history, even if you will, if you want to go there, deals with tribal affiliation, familial name, who's your family, all right? Land of origin, where you guys from, all right? And language, what language do you speak? That is pretty much, those are the people descriptors. People didn't look at color, they said, now, obviously there's some things that are obvious about skin tone, but, excuse me, and again, I'm not cutting that out, all right? I had lunch a little while ago. I didn't have my digestive enzymes. If you guys want to know why I take digestive enzymes, read my book, From Fear to Faith, The Survivor Story, all right? That's a topic for another day. But anyway, listen, what do you hear when you go to a cookout? Like, for example, if you identify as black, if you so-called black, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute. If you so-called black and you bring a friend that the family never met to the cookout with you, what's the questions you gonna get? What are the older generation gonna ask you? Hey, what's your name? One, they wanna know what your name is. Who's your people? All right, where are you from? Okay, those three things. What's your name, familial name? Who are your people, your familial name? Where are you from, land of origin? And of course, you're speaking the same language, so that part doesn't come into play. But that's all there ever was. So if you're talking about, say, for example, Italy, you're talking about somebody who comes from the land of Italy who speaks Italian, all right? And then who's their people? This person might be the son or daughter of somebody famous. They might be the son or daughter of the village pizza maker or whatever. It doesn't matter. Who are you? Where are you from? What language does that person speak? And who's their family? Who are your people? Whatever. That's all there ever was. Whiteness, blackness, that was something that was created to cause division. All right? When you watch my video, What Can Simple Bags of Flour Teach Us About Race? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? So now, if you want to end racism, you gotta attack it at the source. Okay? You must first identify the source if you want to attack it at the source. What is the source of racism, Matt? If racism is a byproduct of so-called white supremacy, then there is where the rubber meets the road, right? Right? And then you keep rinsing and repeating until you boil it down. This is troubleshooting. Okay, not sure why the video stopped, but we're back. Okay. Now, where did I end off? If racism is the product of so-called white supremacy, then for you to end racism, you got to now take your eyes off racism and look at what it is a byproduct of. Its source is so-called white supremacy, right? Right? Okay, so now, if you want to get rid of so-called white supremacy, then you have to learn what powers that white supremacy. What gives it its power? What makes so-called white supremacy a thing? Once you find out what that is, then you pull that battery out, and then poof, you remove the power source of so-called white supremacy. Now you don't have so-called white supremacy. You see what I'm saying? So now we're getting somewhere, right? I hadn't said anything about critical race theory as far teaching critical race theory as being a solution here. I've totally pushed that to the side. Why? Because we've done it for over 4 decades and it hasn't done anything. It hasn't gone anywhere. People argue about it. Hey, we need to teach what happened in. Okay, yeah, maybe we do need to teach it, but is that going to change somebody's heart and mind? Is that going to fix the problem? No, I don't think so. It hasn't. So I mean, if you're not doing anything different, what's good? We just talking about teaching it to a new generation. The other generation that heard it, obviously they ain't care enough to teach it, right? So let's keep this going. What fuels so-called white supremacy, Matt? I'm glad you asked. You see, I wrote an article about a year ago, and I published it to my blog, www.mdtalford.com. And this is a place where I let my thoughts out, my heart sometimes. I'll do it. I don't feel like talking about it on a video. I'll write it out in an article. I haven't written anything in a while, but it doesn't mean it's not coming. I'm an inspirational writer, so I only write when I'm inspired. If I'm not inspired, I don't write. That's me. I know there's some people that write, if you're a writer, you gotta be practicing 4 hours a day. You need to be writing something 4 hours a day. You need to be writing something 2 hours a day, 8 hours a day. Nah, if I feel it, I write it. And I don't stop until it's all been poured out, okay? If I don't feel it, I'm not picking my pen up. But let me keep it moving, okay? This article, Matt. Article titled, What Fuels So-Called White Supremacy? On my blog, mdtalford.com. Under normal circumstances, guys, I simply leave you with a link to it and tell you to go read it. I put it in the description box, say, hey, go read it. But today, and for the benefit of the people who might be listening to this while they're driving or listening to this while they're at work, I'm going to go ahead and read that article for you guys, and then I'm going to wrap up. Because by the time I'm done with that article, you will then understand how both to dismantle critical race theory and to dismantle white supremacy. Let's keep it 100, all right? So-called white supremacy, all right? I don't like that. Ain't no such thing as white people. Ain't no such thing as black people, all right? White people 300, 400, 500 years ago didn't call themselves white people, okay? They called themselves whatever land they were from, okay? Same with so-called black people. They didn't say whatever. They just say, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm from the family from blah, 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 and I'm from Kemet. Or if you're an Israelite, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. My daddy is blah, blah, blah. I'm the son of blah, blah, blah. I'm from the tribe of Judah, or the tribe of Benjamin, or the tribe of Levi, the tribe of Gad, or the tribe of Asher, or Issachar, or Manasseh, or whatever, all right? You gave a shout out to your tribe. Yo, listen, my name is Matt, all right? My name is Matt. My family name is Talford, all right? I'm from New York, all right? All right? I hail out of the Carolinas by way of New York. All right, my people, my dad's people came across on the slave ship. My mother's people were Aboriginal, all right, or Native. They were the real. Look, don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that. Y'all can go look up some documentation, look at some of them old pictures, and see what the Native Americans that were washed out of history and just all classified as Negroes. You'll see what they look like too. Okay, all right. That's my mother's side. My dad's side, they came across on the ships. All right. Anyway, that's a story for another day. All right, that's how it was done. Not I'm black or I'm white. There's too all inclusive. All right, it's too all inclusive. Now, let me get to this article, guys, and then I'll wrap it up. And I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this because we're doing critical race theory dismantled. Okay, this article is titled "What Fuels So-Called White Supremacy?" and it's from my blog, www.mdtalford.com. And here we go. This isn't going to be another post about the highly publicized Breonna Taylor incident and trial. By the way, this was dated September 24th, 2020, okay? Nope, that will neither fix the problem that has continued to produce those types of actions, nor the resultant outcomes and reactions associated with them. If you want to tear down so-called white supremacy, you must first begin by dismantling the engine that drives it. The engine that drives so-called white supremacy is the common thread that connects religions like Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, and every other ism that puts forth the false narrative that the characters in its most important book, aka the Bible, the Torah, the Tanakh, etc., were and are so-called white. And if you go to the website, you can see an artist depiction I have there of Moses, whatever, with a caption under it. I won't read the caption because you can't see the picture. All right, continuing on. Now, reading the opening statement, one might ask, how is that so, Matt? How does the skin color of Bible characters create or fuel a system of so-called white supremacy? The answer is simple: inclusion and exclusion. When arguably the most widely accepted religious book today presents the historical figures written about within its pages as being so-called white or as having Eurocentric features, it can, on the one hand, give those who have a similar appearance an air of self-importance, and in many cases can produce a sense of entitlement to and ownership of whatsoever one's heart desires. On the other hand, not seeing yourself in the guiding principles of a religion that you were told that you had to conform to for salvation of the soul and the body. Read about the Spanish Inquisition, that's a story for another day. When you're told that you have, not seeing yourself in the guiding principles of a religion that you were told you had to conform to for the salvation of your soul can quite naturally leave those who do not look like the so-called Christ and the prophets feeling left out, or worse, having no sense of real belonging to any place or anything. Okay? Now in here I've got a link to the Hidden Hebrews 2 Children of Judah video that was put out a few years ago by a historian by the name of Benayah Israel. Okay, now continuing on. So what then, Matt, is so-called white supremacy in this context? Well, the dictionary defines it as the belief or ideology which holds that the white race is superior to all others and should therefore control or dominate other races. How divisive a notion, but I neither coined the term nor wrote its definition. Now, if you follow my work as a writer, you'll know that the recurring theme in everything I write is that with every what, there is a connected why. With that in mind, if the what of so-called white supremacy is its definition, the devil's always in the details, right? To understand it, we must explore the why, which leads us right back to representation of biblical characters. It is accurate, and here I got another image of Moses, but with brown skin, holding the two tablets and another caption there, which I won't read because you can't see the picture. Anyway, continuing on. Is it accurate to describe Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, David, Solomon, the Messiah and his disciples, and even Paul as white or Middle Eastern? And what is that anyway? What is Middle Eastern? Like, that term that does not appear in scripture or anywhere in pre-New World exploration historical documentation. So what is it? But I digress. Why is describing those characters as what would today be described as black wrong? Why is that wrong? Why is it taboo? What makes that description inaccurate? Is not the Canaan land located within walking distance of Egypt? Has not Egypt always been a part of Africa? Has not Africa, apart from European colonization, always been considered a black continent? Are not Egypt and Canaan connected geographically, which would make the Canaan land African? Were not the ancient Egyptians or Kemetic people Hamites? Was not Ham the progenitor of the dark races? Is it not documented in several places throughout scripture that the Israelites, a Shemitic people, were oftentimes mistaken as Egyptian? Can white-skinned people ever be visibly mistaken for black? I'm going to wrap up this article here, but rather than ending it with a statement, I'll end it with a question. If you consider yourself to be a believer, regardless of which race you identify as, ask yourself this. What happens when you not only dig deep into the clues that exist throughout Scripture to find out who Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the Israelites really were, and find out that they're not who you believe them to be? What happens when you examine the historical, anthropological, and archaeological evidence that abounds but is not necessarily mainstream, and learn that the descendants of the scattered tribes have continuously lived in exile and in servitude since being driven from their homeland by the Romans in 70 AD? And finally, if, or rather when, there comes about a widespread acceptance of the truth of who the descendants of the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah really are, what effect will that have on so-called white supremacy? When you realize that Europeans in the form of Greeks and Romans do not appear in Scripture prior to the books of the Maccabees, which documents the Greek incursion into the land of Judah and ensuing armed conflict between the Greeks and Yahudim, and subsequent treaties between the Yahudim, aka Judites, and the Romans. When you realize that the Europeans in the form of the Greeks and Romans do not appear in Scripture prior to the books of the Maccabees, can so-called white supremacy fueled by false representation in Scripture continue to exist, or will it vanish with the twinkling of an eye? So there you have it, folks. There you have it. There you have it, okay? Critical race theory, in my opinion, is designed to try to deal with the effects of institutionalized racism by teaching it across the board in American academic institutions, all right? K-12, college, whatever. It attempts to rectify that by teaching it. But that's not fixing the problem, because you have to, if you want to get rid of so-called institutionalized racism, you got to find out what fuels racism. Everybody who's white isn't racist. I'm just keeping that 100. A lot of you know that, all right? A lot of you know that. In fact, I would dare say most of you know that the majority of white people, so-called white people, are not racist. Now, so if you want to dismantle racism, you're not going to dismantle it by teaching the history of racism in American in America's foundation. You're not going to fix racism by teaching the history of racism. That's not going to fix it. You got to dismantle it at its source. Not all, I just said, not all so-called white people are racist. So therefore, you're not going to fix racism by teaching it. You have to find out what fuels racism. What fuels racism is white supremacy, all right? I just gave you the dictionary definition of white supremacy in the article, all right? Let me go back to that really quick. Let's see. The dictionary defines white supremacy as the belief or ideology which holds that the white race is superior to all others and should therefore control or dominate other races. That's white supremacy. That's not necessarily racism, all right? So, Matt, can a person be racist and not be a white supremacist? No. If you're a racist, then you're a white supremacist, because racism is the byproduct of white supremacy. Now, can a person be a white supremacist and not be a racist? Absolutely they can. Because again, according to the dictionary, it's the belief or ideology that holds that the white race is superior. So I would challenge now, even though I said that the majority of so-called white people are probably not racist, I would think still that a greater number of that number is probably either, consciously or subconsciously white supremacist. Now, the fabric of American society can lend to that. It can lend to that, because if you're looking, and the media is this is one of the reasons why I tell people, if the news is vexing you, turn it off. If you don't agree with what's on the news, turn it off. If you don't agree with this video, turn it off. Because a lot of times the media is a tool. So the media can actually help to plant the seed of white supremacy in your mind if you're so-called white, even if you're not a racist. Because you're constantly seeing What do you see? You go to Africa, you see a white person holding up a sick baby, as if there aren't people from that country who are the same ethnicity as those babies taking care of them too. They're not showing you that, okay? They're showing you this whole, hey, the white people have to go and save the black people. And I'll talk about this in another video, how, you know, racism in many cases academically is posited as Europeans going over to Africa and getting these wildling so-called black folk, rounding them up and then sending them overseas to work. If that is the case, then how is it then that when you get off the slave ship and they're looking at the charters with your name, your age, and your occupation, if you're a wildling running around the jungle, how did you get an occupation? I'll wait. Carpenter, blacksmith, seamstress, okay? Those are just a few. Brick mason, all right? Horticulturalist. Maybe didn't say that, but he's the person that has knowledge of what trees to plant, how they, you know, botanist, whatever. These people had occupations. They had skills, okay? Silversmith, okay? These people knew how to do these jobs when they were brought over. How is that so if you rounded up these people and then you gave us? So, you know, I say all of that to say I want to wrap this up. History can do a number on you if it's taught incorrectly. I get that. But the point I'm trying to make is you don't dismantle racism by teaching the history of how racism is interwoven into the fabric of American society, all right? You have to find out what fuels racism, all right? Racism is fueled by white supremacy. What fuels white supremacy? White supremacy, in my opinion, as I read in my article, is fueled by this notion that the people in the most important books, arguably in the world, or text, sacred text, were white Europeans. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So that's where the rubber meets the road. If you want to dismantle, if you want to teach something in academic institutions, if you want to teach something in schools of theology, start teaching the truth about the identity of these people that are in the arguably the most important sacred texts throughout the history of mankind. These people that you call so-called Black Americans or so-called Negroes are actually the offspring of the biblical Israelites. Teach that truth. Teach that truth. If you want to, am I just saying this? Am I just pulling this out of my fourth point of contact? No, all right? This stuff is documented. You can go and look at Benayah Israel's work with Hidden Hebrews. He's got a fantastic new video on Vimeo on demand entitled Reclaiming the Throne. You can look at Ron Dalton Jr.'s work on Hebrews to Negroes, straight anthropology. He's giving you he's tracing the anthropological history of these people, these Shemitic people who are now known as Negroes, all right? You look at Benayah Israel's Hidden Hebrews work, look at his movie, his film, Reclaiming the Throne. He gives you the historical, all right? The historical representation. He shows you how in books written by so-called white people, they identify the so-called Jews as Black, all right? Down to identifying the features. Go and look at the, is it called the Lachish relief? I'll put the title on and maybe a photo on the bottom of the screen here so you can see it. But look at that Lachish relief that documents the Assyrian military defeat of the Israelites and the subsequent enslavement or taking them into captivity. Look at the reliefs. Look at those carvings of what those faces and noses and that hair look like. That hair looked a lot like this. In fact, it looked just like it. I'm not wearing the cornrows today, but the hair looked just like this. So how do you get from that to this? So if you want to dismantle, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to say it one more time. If you want to dismantle white supremacy, you're not going to do it by teaching critical race theory. All right? You want to dismantle racism, you're not going to do it by teaching critical race theory. So if you want to teach it, great. If you don't want to teach it, fine. What is the end? What is the end goal for teaching critical race theory? What's the end goal for it? You want to teach somebody how to treat you? Be a certain way. You teach people how to treat you through your actions with them, through the way you interact with them. All right? You don't have to demand respect. Your persona, your personality can command respect. There's some people that they may not like you, but they gotta respect you. It's because of your presence. It's because of who you are, your character, your aura. I don't have to ask you to respect me. All right? I don't have to ask you. I'm going to, my behavior, the way I carry myself is going to command a certain level of respect. The way I talk to you, the way I respond to how you talk to me. I could go on with this, y'all, but I'm going to wrap it up here. So there you have it. You've been watching another edition of Maddie's Rap. Sorry, I got a little passionate there. The show where we rap about things that guys rap about. Listen, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. I want to hear from you guys in the comments as well. Tell me, what are your thoughts on critical race theory? What are your thoughts on what I shared today? What are your thoughts on whether or not critical race theory should be taught? What are your thoughts on what the end goal of critical race theory is? Because I got some other opinions on it. I won't get too far off into it. But to me, again, if you ask me for a one-word description of critical race theory, I would say it's distraction. Okay? I'll end this by saying that. Critical race theory is a distraction. Distraction from what, Matt? Distraction from, it's getting you to look over there when you should be looking here. Who am I? Stop calling yourself black. I said that in my video titled, What Can Simple Bags of Flour Teach Us About Race? Stop calling yourself black. All right? Now, I got some white friends that have told me they've seen some of my work. They said, Matt, you really, I appreciate what you're saying, but you really should be saying that we're Americans. You're American or whatever. I was born in the soil. Yes, I wore the uniform in the United States Army, okay? And yet still, I'm not ignorant to the fact of how my people, when I say my people, I'm talking about those who share in the plight. You're from the same tribe, you're descendants from the same, our ancestors came over on a ship together, or our ancestors were already here on this soil and had their land taken from them by European conquerors. All right, I listen, I share that with them. I don't share the other ancient experience. Now you're saying I should forget that and just be American, but these people that are out here arguing critical race theory, they're doing it because not all things are afforded to everybody. Look up, grab your favorite, grab that app, the legal dictionary app by Farlex, and type in the word citizen, and look at article number 3. Look up citizen in the legal dictionary and look at article number 3. And then tell somebody why they should forget, when you won't let them forget that the law says they're actually not a citizen of this country if they're not white. I'm not making this stuff up. It's there. I'm not making it up. I am not making this stuff up. Okay? Guys, listen, I love you. Tell somebody you love them and mean it. How do you mean it? You show it. And listen, I want to say at the end of this video, if this video triggered you, if it got you upset, maybe I don't have my shirt on today, but I'll put a link here. Maybe I'll put the picture up right here. It says, no righteous man is ever offended by truth. If the truth offends you, examine your heart. All right. So I'll leave you on that note, and you can get the shirt from I'll leave a link to where to get the shirt. I'm getting kind of tired, y'all, so I'm gonna wrap this video up. And if my wife was sitting here in front of me, she'd be like, so I'm gonna pretend she's sitting here, and I'm gonna wrap this video up, guys. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And just remember, at the end of the day, this is the absolute last thing I will say. The only thing that matters in life is what you're gonna get graded on when you check out of life, all right? What do you mean, Matt? You're gonna get graded and then you gotta come back, all right? So there's no, they don't teach reincarnation in church, but reincarnation, some people call it regeneration, it's in scripture, all right? And I can do a whole nother video on that, I won't do that. But the only thing that you're graded on is righteousness and unrighteousness, all right? If you are righteous, you got rewards. If you're unrighteous, you're gonna have karma to deal with. And karma bites hard, all right? You don't believe me? Watch my video, Universal Balance Sheets. I'll put a link to that in the description below too. Guys, take care. Thanks for watching and have a great day.